Dana White is one of those people that when they need you or when you're beneficial to them, they'll do anything for you. Like you guys are locked in. But the minute that you're no longer useful or that you piss them off for whatever reason, it's like they flip a switch and do a full 180. Like it's the same person, just a complete different energy. You guys know what I mean, right? They'll go from being your best friend to someone literally trying to ruin your life, sometimes over something as simple as a misunderstanding. Because, like, if you're one of his degenerate gambling butt buddies, you'll probably think he's one of the nicest people in the world. And that isn't for no reason. It's because he'll do stuff like give you $250,000 for your birthday. Or he might even offer your cameraman $50K to drop 19 pounds in a month.
209. You weigh 209 next week. I did a monkey bomb, so I'm May 16th. So May 16th, if you come in at 190 pounds, I'm gonna give you $50,000.
Holy fuck!
For you to hit 190 May 16th.
Holy thing.
Whoa!
While actively making basically all his fighters do the same for nothing. So today, I wanted to talk about how petty Dana White can be once you're not his friend anymore.
But Stitch Duran was never my friend, you know?
So Georges St-Pierre is without a doubt an absolute legend. And not only that, he's probably the first superstar in this sport to have an entire country behind him. In short, he did a lot for the UFC. You guys remember when he fought Hendricks, right? Now, whether you think GSP won or Hendricks won is honestly subjective and mostly comes down to how you personally define winning. However, what we do know is that Hendricks was basically a ball of steroids. So even if, at the moment, it felt like he deserved to win that fight, in hindsight, it's probably a good thing that he didn't. But that's honestly neither here or there. The important part of the story is what happened after GSP won. In his post-fight speech, he said that he was dealing with a lot of things in his personal life and that he would be taking some time off. He wasn't sure how long or even if he would be back at all, but for now, he needed some time to get his life in order. So during the post-fight media question answers, Dana was the first one up there, and the things that he was saying were honestly outrageous when you look back at it.
Did you see George get smashed and hurt in the first round? It's about damage. This is a fight. It's whoever inflicts the most damage. You get hurt, you get wobbled, you get dropped. I'm blown away that Georges St-Pierre won that fight. And I guarantee if you did a poll, I mean, not many people think Georges St-Pierre won that fight.
What was your take? Can you explain what you said on television about you were upset that George was talking about retiring and not giving Johnny a rematch?
I'm not upset about him. Listen, when a guy wants to retire, I mean, did he say he wants to retire? He didn't say, I'm going to retire, I'm hanging it up, it's been great, everybody. Thanks a lot for all the years, see you later. He said, I'm going to take some time off, and I'm going to, listen, first of all, that decision that happens, right? You don't just say, hey, I'm going to take a while off, maybe I'll be back, maybe I won't. You owe it to the fans, you owe it to that belt, you owe it to this company, and you owe it to Johnny Hendricks.
Now, if you're confused about why Dana was even upset, it's not like the guy loved Johnny Hendricks, and robbery decisions happen all the time. He basically went on this rant because he knew once GSP walked out of that building that night, Dana would literally lose whatever control he still had over GSP, which honestly at that time wasn't even much. He knew GSP had enough money to never have to fight again, and the fact that he was walking away on his own terms without letting Dana White use him up like he's used to doing with other fighters just didn't sit right with Dana. So he decided he was going to try to humiliate GSP as much as possible before the night was over, hoping it would make him feel better about himself. And I know for a fact Dana was being petty because that wasn't the only thing he did that night. So I hope it's common knowledge that when a fighter wins a title fight, the belt that they're given is theirs to keep. Like fighters take that belt home and keep it, even after they technically lose the title later on. The UFC just makes a new one every single time. Now, I'm mentioning that because after they were done with media, GSP was getting ready to leave. And while he was in the shower, someone that worked for the UFC went into his locker room, grabbed his new belt, and took it. So when GSP got out of the shower, it was gone. Now, GSP didn't care that much at the time, so he just left. But I honestly think the plan was that they were hoping he would come to them before leaving to ask for it. And they were probably going to do something else to humiliate him again. To this day, that belt is the only one of GSP's many belts that he does not have in his possession. And yeah, I know that in reality, all Dana really did was talk shit about him and then take his belt, which isn't really the end of the world. But the reason I'm mentioning this is more about the consequences of those actions. Because after GSP retired, he went on Chael Sonnen's podcast at the time and basically said that if it wasn't for how Dana treated him that night, he possibly wouldn't have retired. So basically, Dana was being so petty that it ended up being counterproductive for the business. Because in reality, he was mad that GSP was leaving. But at the same time, he was doing things that helped reassure GSP that leaving was the right decision. So basically, Dana White is the reason we didn't have GSP for all those years. So Chris Leben is an ex-UFC fighter who wasn't remarkable by any means, but he was definitely a fan favorite. He was on the first season of The Ultimate Fighter, and he was in the UFC from 2005 to 2013. Now, Chris Leben was one of those fighters who never really took things too seriously. He had plenty of vices that often got in the way of him performing to his fullest potential. In the beginning of his career, because of how fun he was and how much the fans liked him, he was always on Dana's good side. But with time, more and more incidents kept unfolding, and at some point, Dana stopped liking him. And I'll let Chris himself explain exactly what was going on at the time.
I had lost a lot of the fire. I was in a shitty relationship. You know, I was battling with drugs and alcohol. My life outside of the gym and outside of the cage was absolutely in shambles.
So nothing he just mentioned, nor his actual career, have anything to do with this story. Apart from the drugs and the alcohol, he had another vice that he was keeping a secret. Chris Leben didn't like paying Uncle Sam. So like every tax evader that's not a billionaire or a corporation, he eventually got caught and was forced to pay it all back. And this happened right after his career just ended. Keep in mind that at this point, Chris was still an addict and hadn't even recovered yet. So on a random day, Chris gets a call from Dana, and Dana asks him how much he owes in taxes. So just a side note, I don't know how exactly Dana knew, but it wasn't really public information at the time that Chris hadn't been paying his taxes. So anyways, Dana asks him how much, and Chris gives him a number. Dana then tells him that he'll pay for it. Now imagine how much relief that probably was for Chris, who at the time was basically unemployed, probably broke, and definitely going through it. That must have felt like a gift from God himself. Now you're probably not gonna believe what happened next, or maybe you will, because I'm not really sure there's anything Dana could do that can actually surprise us at this point. But yeah, he basically ghosted Chris Leben. And not only did he ghost him, he went ahead and just told everybody that Chris doesn't pay his taxes. And remember, it wasn't public information at the time.
You know, that's ridiculous. You know, it's crazy. He called me the day, like 2 days before that, and he asked me how much I owed in taxes. I told him what I owed in taxes. That being said, I paid taxes every single year. I just, you know, was a kid bad with money, and I didn't pay them all, you know, and fines and fees and everything else. That's a really good question that you just asked, you know, and then, like, why did he do that? I don't understand. And then he goes out and says Chris Leben has never paid taxes. Well, here's what happened. He asked me, Chris, how much do you owe in taxes? I said, Dana, this is exactly the number that I owe in taxes. And then he said, don't worry about it, kid. I'm going to help out. I'm going to help you out. I'm going to take care of you. And that's a quote. After I told him what I owed in taxes, he said, don't worry about it, kid. I'm going to help you out. I'm going to take care of you. Just give me a couple days. And then he never called me back. He went out and said Chris Leben never paid taxes.
And obviously, I hope it goes without saying, I don't think Dana was responsible for Chris's fuck up. But I also hope we can all agree that what he did was completely unnecessary. Fortunately for Chris though, his story has a pretty good ending. Because he eventually cleaned his shit up, and he got authorized to become an actual ref. And he's been doing pretty good at it ever since.
You mentioned earlier about your referee course online, right, at herbdean.com. And I know Chris Leben, someone I spoke to a couple weeks ago, he took that course.
He took the course, and man, he did a really good job. And it was awesome to have, I always have a spot here, for improving the sport, so there's some people that we encourage to come through.
So I'm really glad that things ended well for him and that he did actually get clean. But his story is a reminder that Dana White is only nice to you for as long as you're useful to him. And once you stop being useful to him, you're fucking cooked, my guy.